Welcome to the TechLink Health Podcast, an on-demand source for the top trending healthcare topics and insights. Delivered by key opinion and emerging leaders and as featured on the TechLink Health app. The healthcare industry is rapidly evolving, so our goal is to connect listeners to the most relevant insights, ranging from digital health to financial well-being to interesting side gigs. For more details, visit www.techlink.health.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the TechLink Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Sanan. Often on the podcast, we talk about emerging technologies that are shaping the future of health and wellness. We also delve into the data that is necessary to continue building and linking the connectedness of health technology. Ultimately, these innovations will enable a future that starts to become more aligned to the longevity and preventive aspects of wellness. In order to move in this direction, it becomes important to highlight technologies that are being developed for specific areas of practice, as well as leading conversations around how these innovations will enter our day-to-day lives. In today's episode, we're continuing a series focused on neurology and NeuroTech, while also starting a new conversation centered around sports-related technologies and how they benefit athletes at all levels. This episode's guest is Grenville Thine, finance executive, medical device entrepreneur, and the co-founder and CEO of NeuroFlex. The NeuroFlex device measures and monitors the impact of a head knock, or perhaps we might call it a concussion here in the United States, using head and eye tracking virtual reality technology. The technology has been used by a variety of professional, collegiate, and amateur sports teams and organizations. The ability to detect brain injuries during athletic competition is critical to ensuring the safety of athletes. And more broadly, the monitoring of brain health is increasingly becoming mainstream for a variety of use cases. The wider implications of the technology are strongly tied to brain health and neurodevelopment, leading to an overarching mission of brain health for life. It goes without saying that Grenville and the NeuroFlex team have a passion for neurotech and brain health, and we look forward to getting his perspective on the podcast. So without further delay, we're excited to welcome Grenville Thine, the CEO and co-founder of NeuroFlex, to the podcast. Grenville, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. Nice to be here.
Thank you. So to start and give our listeners some background, can you take a moment to introduce yourself in a bit more detail and tell us about your journey into the neurotechnology space?
Yeah, the journey really started with mum and dad. Dad's a trained Mayo Clinic oncologist. Mum's a nurse. And when we came back to Australia, mum and dad started building day surgery centres earlier than anybody else. And that grew into a business, hospitals throughout Australia and New Zealand. I myself personally have a degree in commerce and law. And when I got involved in the family business, we were very much focused on health tech. And my other brother had happened to be in Canada and found NeuroFlex from McGill University in Montreal as a result of 30 years of research from Professor Mimi Galeana. It was her idea to take all the clinical studies that have been done at the moment with respect to eye tracking and vestibular ocular motor reflexes and screening and put it into the virtual reality world. We liked the idea and we ended up buying a significant stake in the company. And I'm proud to say that the Thine family and the Galeana family are partners in this business going forward.
Thank you. That's fascinating background. So let's talk more about the NeuroFlex device. It's clear that the device has been developed with many years of research and development, and that's a differentiating factor across the spectrum of devices. So tell us some more about this journey that has led to the evolution of the product and its success in the market.
One of the things that attracted to us was this was an idea that Mimi Galeana came up with around the kitchen table with her husband, who's an MIT trained mathematician. And virtual reality was moving into a space where she felt she could take a lot of the clinical work and put it into the virtual reality world. Her husband developed the algorithms and the models around it. It had won a prize out of McGill University in the incubation fund. We thought as a family we could add to it marketing, sales, branding, and take it to the global market. We were attracted to the fact that it is eye tracking technology. 80% of what we capture in our surroundings comes through our eyes to our brain to really determine what to do next. So when those neuro connections are cut as a result of a mild traumatic brain injury, as a result of other neurological disorders, we can pick it up in the NeuroFlex. So we felt as though the brain health for life concept was relevant to what we were trying to achieve with NeuroFlex.
That's a really broad range of individuals and institutions that have been involved in the evolution of this product. And it's really interesting to hear about how these connections have led to the development of such an important device. So it's been especially interesting to hear about the success of the NeuroFlex device across professional, collegiate, and amateur sports. So tell us about your future vision for the technology and how will this continue to evolve over time? And in an ideal scenario, for example, what could we expect to see in 2030?
Yeah. So when we decided to launch the product globally, we wanted to focus on what we call sports related concussion. The NeuroFlex test is portable, it's in a backpack. It takes 10 minutes to do what we call a baseline of an athlete. Then, after they suffer a mild traumatic injury or a head knock, we recommend that the clinician look at all the data that we provide in what we call a neurological report, and we bring the athlete back to their healthy baseline before they return to contact. The issue that we're facing with sports related concussion today is what we call the second, third concussion syndrome. And we saw it with Tua last year, where he suffered a concussion and 4 or 5 days later he was back and the concussion was much worse. And it's the constant head knocks that build up the issues in the brain, resulting in neurological disorders like pre-dementia, Alzheimer's. We've even seen cases of motor neuron disease. So we're very much focused on early diagnostics, getting the player back on the field to contact and having the data to do so. The final point I wanted to make is that, yes, we're working with the likes of FIFA and World Rugby, British horse racing, and many of those top tier clients, but we are all about the grassroots community. We believe that there may be issues that we see in the press at the top, but it's really about the kids that play the sport on a day to day or weekly basis and looking after their brain health as they come through the system. And they may be professionals one day or they may be amateurs one day. So we don't differentiate and we're very focused on that part of the segment.
That's such a great point, especially as we're seeing increasing competitiveness in youth sport. And then we're seeing these long-term injuries play out and there's become a lot more awareness of the complications and things that can result. So the ability to detect and perhaps have a direct impact on the future of these people's brain health and neurological health is really exciting. So, thank you for sharing that information and sharing some ideas about the future of NeuroFlex. One thing I thought was really interesting looking at your website was how, like you said, very portable this device is and how it can just hook up to someone's laptop and you get the information very quickly.
That's right. It's very important to provide a product that gives you clinical grade data, but in an easy to use way, because whether you want to go do a scan or an MRI, that can be expensive, it can be time consuming. So the product was developed with that in mind, and it has shown to be very successful in providing that data, whether it be side of field or side of pitch or back in the clinic 1 or 2 days later.
So I'm curious what type of training might be required for somebody to be able to look at the waveforms that you have on your device and be able to interpret that.
Yeah, so we are not cleared as a diagnostic advice. We are a data gathering device for the clinician to make the diagnosis. And we liken it to when you do your blood pressure. The clinician looks at your results and makes his or her diagnosis. We do accredit our testers to capture that data for the clinician. That is an easy process. It takes about an hour to train up a tester. And so telehealth has become very useful for our product, where once the data is captured, once the report is produced, it can be then telehealthed in to the clinician to conduct their diagnosis.
That's fantastic. So very accessible. And it's exciting to learn more about the future impact of this device. Another past topic we discussed on the podcast is how, as a society, we're entering an era of longevity and interest in longevity. And many people are focused on these aspects of health and wellness. So we wonder, as that plays more into a preventive approach, what role will brain health and perhaps even this device or future iterations of the device continue to evolve and work within that space?
Yeah, the key to any prevention or early diagnostics is data, and having access to that data in a form that can be understood and can also be used quickly. So we've conducted over 80,000 tests for the product. We now have what is normal for your age group and your gender. We know that women suffer longer symptoms with concussion than men do. And we are very focused on allowing the clinician to have enough data to look at the gender balance between what happened. Depression is an issue related to concussion or mild traumatic brain injuries. Again, having that data in front of the clinician allows them to manage that appropriate part better. And the final point I want to make is that there is a high incidence of dementia and Alzheimer's and other neurological diseases in people who do play contact sport. And that doesn't necessarily have to be American football. That could be soccer from hitting the ball. It can be from boxing, etc., from constant hits to the head. We want to be ahead of the game where the clinician can see a change in your brain health and tailor the appropriate rehab and process after that.
I think that's a really important point that you made as well about women more susceptible to some of the impact of these type of head injuries. And it's a part of the population. We look at sports and follow up of sports that really hasn't been addressed or taken as seriously. Women don't always go on to competing at the higher levels of professional sports, although we're seeing more of that. But the impact, as you say, on the younger people that could have a long-term effect on their health no matter what they decide to do in the future is particularly concerning.
That's right. That's right. Women's sport is now very high up in the agenda when it comes to our product. Not only because it's now being played a lot more in front of the public, in front of TV, etc. A lot of money is going to women's sport. Recently, when we worked for FIFA on the Women's World Cup in soccer down here in Australia, there were numerous concussions that were either happening at training or happening in the game. So we were very proud to be part of that process of allowing the clinician to have enough data to decide whether that player is ready to return back to contact or play or not. The second thing is that we want participation in sport to continue. We don't want parents not allowing their children to not participate because they're scared around issues of brain health. We want to be able to provide the data that gives people informed decisions on an objective basis about this issue. And so that's very important to us as a company.
That's a great point because I think that fear, especially now that we're seeing more of the complications and becoming more aware of that, is probably impacting parents' decisions to allow their kids to participate. It's a very interesting point.
That's right. And concussion is not only on the sporting field. It can happen in the playground. It can happen falling over on a bike. So we want to be there for everybody as a product to show what's happening to your brain health as you go through formative years in school and post school.
Do you have an idea of whether this device might be available in the future, say in emergency rooms when people come in having gotten knocked on the head for any number of reasons?
That's right. So we are working in emergency departments at the moment down here in Australia, New Zealand. What is fascinating about that piece is that when a person presents to an emergency department and they might have a broken arm or a broken leg, nobody really focuses on the brain because they're focusing on the injury that they see in front of them. So we're now being used as a triage product to triage the person and put the NeuroFlex on and get an automatic brain health report while they're in the emergency department.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, looking towards the future, a recent development in the media has been the clearance of Elon Musk's Neuralink technology for human trials, which obviously is very different than your technology. But if you would share your thoughts on this development and have potential similarities or ways to work alongside each other?
So there are many technologies out there that look at different parts of brain health. We are very collaborative. We believe that what we all need on an open source basis is data. When we need to start sharing our data on open source so we can make proper decisions around brain health. It's been one part of the body that has not had enough focus because it's hard to detect, to analyze, to diagnose many issues. I had a very sad story the other day where a family relative was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. That diagnosis took a long time to get there, despite all the tests. She was feeling that she was getting tingling in the mouth, her words were slurring. Now, once you hit the stage where the motor neuron disease has taken hold of the body, you get to a cliff, and it's very hard to reverse back from that. So we're all about open source, sharing data, getting ahead of the game when it comes to this. So Elon Musk's product would certainly be something that would provide data that we'd be very interested in.
That's fascinating. Really interesting perspective. So, staying on the topic of devices, one core premise of TechLink Health is that linking technologies for health and wellness will be the wave of the future. And along these lines, what are some other notable neurotechnologies that might work in tandem with NeuroFlex? And more broadly, are there any other technologies that you're looking at that might complement these neurotechnologies? So, for example, with AI being such a hot topic, I'm sure that many devices are looking to align with that technology. And finally, on the personal side, what are some of your favorite health tech devices?
So there's two answers to this question. First of all, in sports related concussion, mouth guards are being talked about a lot, or wearing helmets that pick up what we call G-force hits. And we know in a lot of sports now they have video coverage, they have what they call concussion spotters. So we work very closely with those companies because a G-force hit or a spotting by a concussion, you've still got to be neuroflexed or scanned to see whether you're ready to return to contact. So we're all about making sure the athlete doesn't go back too early. There are many sports in the world who have mandated sit out times, and they vary. There's no science around what is the right time to sit out. We believe the data is the time that tells you whether they're ready to go back to contact or not. The second piece that's happening a lot, you've got blood tests, you've got many other saliva tests. Again, we want to work with various companies to come up with the best solution. Because as I talk about the elites, again, it's about the grassroots. We want to be portable, adaptable. We want to be in the community. We want to be side of pitch. We want to be in your local doctor, your physical therapist. In Australia, here we call neurophysiotherapists who do a lot of the rehab piece. So we're very open on that discussion.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. The idea of the early identification by having some type of sensor in the mouth guard or the helmet, and then being able to identify problems that might otherwise have gone ignored or overlooked.
That's right. There is a gold standard for concussion. It's called the SCAT, the Sport Concussion Assessment Tool. And it's effectively a paper pen test, waving a finger, asking some cognitive questions. That's been used for the last 24 years in contact sport. We want to work with the SCAT as part of an addition of a layer of data and information for the clinician to make their diagnosis and determine a return to play.
Very interesting. So, on the same topic of emerging health technologies, devices, and wearables, what are some of the challenges and risks or even potential dangers that might need to be addressed along the way?
This is a new product. So a lot of our marketing is what we call education marketing. It's educating the community, the physician around doing something different than they've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. A lot of our clients, especially we have a very big client in Atlanta, Georgia called the Concussion Center, is a young, new up and coming doctor who's very keen to learn new tech. So we've been marketing for the last 3 years. We're now finding that the two are coming together. The more established physicians are understanding the product and understanding the benefit it brings. The young physicians are coming through and wanting to embrace new technologies. So we believe we're over that hump in terms of education marketing. What's exciting for us is the data. We're now able to go into universities, colleges, and show the data in real time of what it's allowing us to diagnose with their assistance, plus how return to play is such an important piece of this equation. The final thing I wanted to say is we are starting to move into other neurological diseases. So falls risk is a big issue in the aging population. And a lot of that is to do with your vestibular ocular motor reflexes and how you see the world around you. We are now conducting trials in aged care facilities where we're putting ourselves up against the gold standard and trying to become predictive as to falls risk. And then the final area that's big is around the ADHD and the neurodevelopmental disorders in young adults. Again, we're working with clinicians about picking up which parts of the NeuroFlex are most susceptible to those issues.
That's really a broad range of potential applications. And it'll be interesting to see over time how follow up studies look after intervention. There seems like just a wide range of possibilities for this type of technology.
Correct. And I think that's our biggest challenge because sports related concussion, because of the work we're doing, I do believe that we are one of the number one products in the industry. When you start moving to other verticals, other areas of brain health, you really need to be backed up by proper clinical trials and peer reviewed studies around the product. So, yes, people get attracted to going down a certain path and looking at this, but you got to stay true to your core product and develop it over time. So we're not rushing, but we do realize that it's there for the opportunity.
Really intriguing technology. So, one of the primary drivers for a new health ecosystem is the rising cost of healthcare and accessibility on a global scale. And when you think about the future of healthcare with regards to quality of treatment and cost, what are some of the implications for neurology and for neurotech? And in particular for NeuroFlex, how is the cost of the device covered? And what role does insurance company play either now or in the future as you see it?
Yeah. So we were attracted to the product as not only investors, but from a medical standpoint because of its ease of use, its portability, and it's less expensive than other technologies. So we have what we call an unlimited testing model where a client will pay us a set fee for the month and they can do as many tests as they want. Our largest client does 30 neuroflexes per week. They don't have to send their patients off to an MRI, for instance, in some cases. There's currently chairs in the market that have eye cameras and they swivel the chair around and look at the eye movement. So that was one of our key planks is to bring it accessibility at a cost. We believe the future is that NeuroFlex should be part of a medical checkup. We are working with large institutions that are seeing the benefit of doing a yearly checkup with the NeuroFlex and being ahead of the game as the brain health changes and seeing it in real time and data. So that's something that we're focused on.
So, when you say part of the regular checkup, would that be of athletes in general or aging population, or how do you foresee that?
So there's areas like defense that are very focused on the brain health of their personnel. We would very much like to see as a first at the cadet stage when they're doing a medical. And then when those army personnel go on a tour or go away and they come back and they're being tested and monitoring their brain health through their career. We also see it in some countries like Japan, where it's mandatory to have a medical checkup every year as part of when you're working. So we'd like to be part of that process. So we're constantly having conversations. One of our clients owns a very large company with over 20,000 employees. We're looking at maybe putting that into their medical checkup process.
Very interesting. So, in closing, any final advice for those wanting to stay connected to the innovations happening in the neurotechnology space? And also, we're always interested in topical book recommendations or any other types of content on the subject. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
One of the things that we're very excited about are the work that we're doing with clinicians in the community. And we know that parents and athletes and people will say, I've just done a NeuroFlex baseline, but I've just suffered a mild traumatic brain injury, a concussion on the weekend. What do I do next? So we've now closed the loop on that of recommending where they should go for their diagnostics and their rehabilitation. That has brought us into schools, colleges, universities, and we're educating the people that were neuroflexing, but also educating the school teachers, we're educating the parents, because it used to be a badge of honor to suffer a concussion and not talk about it. We're opening it up now to let's talk about it. Let's have the data in front of us. Let's use it. So that's what we're excited about. And we're talking to a lot of different people in not only America, but UK, Ireland, Africa, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, around this concept of bringing it into the community and having education around it and being very aware around brain health.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing these ideas and concepts and all of the exciting innovations in this area. My guest today has been Grendel Thine with NeuroFlex, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode. TechLink Health is a healthcare advisory platform for consumers and organizations to stay informed with the latest insights while connecting with healthcare experts for telehealth, e-consults, and consulting services. For more details, visit www.techlink.health.